But I didn't get the chance. The planet, dormant for a month and a half, suddenly erupted on all sides. Whoever had orchestrated the uprising on the planet was, without exaggeration, a genius. No one suspected a thing, right up to the final moment. And then, suddenly, all hell broke loose. Point 3 infantry bases, just like our 316th, were annihilated in an instant by nuclear charges. Most likely, the warheads had been planted long before the planetary assault, strategically hidden in the locations deemed ideal for troop deployment. The same fate befell an improvised spaceport 30 kilometers from us. The mushroom cloud from the blast was clearly visible from our position. In fact, almost everyone on base ran outside to watch the fiery column sway against the evening sky. Our shift was already over. After all, that's when the mortar rain began that I'd lingered in the training hall and hadn't made it out with the others. That probably saved my skin. The explosion started just as I reached the doorway. Regular explosives mixed with plasma. The building shook. A blast of hot air swept through the corridor. My ears began to ache, and a high-pitched ringing took up permanent residence in my skull. A severed arm, torn off by one of the blasts, landed at my feet. I didn't try to play the hero. I ducked into the bathroom, taking cover from the shrapnel. The bombardment lasted about 3 minutes. Then, silence fell. I stood there, frantically debating whether to run for a weapon or stay hidden. The trouble was, I had no idea what the attackers were planning. Would they follow up with another barrage? Or move in for a ground assault? I figured the shelling would resume and stayed put, listening intently. That's when I heard it, a faint pop overhead. Seconds later, a thin mist started seeping through the doorway. Shit. Drilled instincts kicked in. I bolted for the front doors, miraculously intact, slammed them shut, then rushed straight back into the bathroom. "Private, where the hell are you going?" barked Lieutenant Borisov. "Combustible gas, sir." I shouted back, not slowing down. He reacted instantly, diving in behind me and slamming the door. And then the base was engulfed in flames. The small bathroom window didn't do the view justice, but we weren't in the mood to admire the scenery. The monstrous detonation of gas, now coating the entire base, first crushed our shelter like paper, then tore through the metal walls in the reverse shockwave, ripping the roof off above us. As we gasped for thin air, the atmosphere came rushing back, dragging with it slabs of concrete, twisted steel, and a storm of debris. We had the sense to stay down and the luck not to get crushed. Then it all stopped. And by some miracle there was air we could breathe. "Lieutenant, weapons," I croaked. "They're coming." Borisov looked at me with hollow eyes and nodded. That we stood, stepping over smoldering debris toward the barracks. No other survivors in sight. "Move it. Move it," the lieutenant muttered under his breath, barely managing to walk. I got the impression he was slightly concussed. My hearing was shot too, but I could still walk straight. To my surprise, our squad's barracks weren't in total ruins. Damaged? Yes. Walls dented, holes punched through, but still standing. Unlike most other buildings. "That you, rookie?" came a hoarse voice. Sounded like Crouch. "Yeah, it's me." "Where the hell's my locker?" "Over here." "What for?" "Snap. Out of it, Crouch. They're coming to finish us off. Grab your gear." My ID pinged, and the locker popped open, revealing my rifle. I skipped the helmet. And the vest. Probably the concussion again. Crouch appeared beside me, rifle in hand. "No ammo," he whispered dramatically. As if I didn't know. "To the armory. Lieutenant'll figure it out." A dozen people had already gathered near the supply depot. I spotted Sergeant Andrews and Petlia from our squad. "Rookie, Crouch, you made it. Good. The lieutenant's about to crack this thing open. Then we hold the line." Borisov's ID worked like a magic wand. The depot doors slid open, and the lockers inside followed suit. "Take your pick." "Attention," barked Borisov. "Vests and helmets are mandatory. If you forgot them, get them now. Ammo, grab all you can carry. Grenades, minimum 5 per person. Go." I slapped a magazine into my rifle. Click, satisfying. And the tiny display flashed a calming green 50. For more mags went into pouches on my chest and stomach. One snapped into the rifle stock. Two more on my belt, next to the grenades. I must have looked like a walking keg of beer and camo. The helmet settled softly on my head, the night vision visor auto-lowering. I muttered a curse and pushed the overly smart plastic back up. Better without it, for now. The sight would do. I flipped the short scope up from the rifle's side and locked it in place with a flick of the lever. Switched the view to twilight mode and stepped outside. The lieutenant shut the door behind us. Fan out, he ordered. Form a circular defense around the depot. If you've got suppressors, mount them now. Any unknown approaching the perimeter is an enemy. No exceptions. Move. My eyes scanned for cover. I liked the look of the ruined garage, smoke curling from a truck out front. Report your positions, came a whisper through the helmet comms. Rookie reporting. Garage position secured. Fire zone from admin building to base gate, including the gate itself. Copy, the whisper replied. Silence followed. I lay prone behind the truck's front wheel, screwing on the suppressor I'd stashed in the stock. Now they wouldn't hear me. Hopefully. I flicked on the scope's recording mode. If I survive this, it might come in handy. All units. Open the general channel, two-way. Report only essentials. The waiting began. Minutes dragged. Movement. Sighted. North-northwest. Approximate. 10 targets. North-northwest. Right behind me. I prayed the rear was secure. Fire when ready. Copy. Gunfire burst out behind me. Single shots, then volleys. A grenade exploded. A voice groaned, amplified. Through the comms. They're pulling back, Lieutenant. Gasped someone. I'm hit. Can't hold the sector. Near the gate, a head popped up over the fence. My smart scope painted it red. I shifted the crosshairs, held my breath, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle jerked silently. The head jerked harder and vanished. Rookie reporting. Lone target at base gate. Neutralized. Well done, Rookie. Suppressor? Affirmative. Silence again. Then the full attack hit us from all directions. More gunfire behind me. An explosion. To the left. In my zone, enemies swarmed the gate. Others climbed the fence in small groups. Cannon fodder to distract, while trained soldiers flanked. Main gate sector. Heavy breach. I can't hold it. Hold, Rookie. No reinforcements coming. I pressed the trigger and didn't let go until the display read 0. The smart rifle, saving me some precious seconds, ejected the magazine on its own. I snapped in a fresh one and peered through the scope. Out of 49 rounds fired, most, of course, went nowhere. But some of the attackers weren't so lucky. There were a few bodies lying on the ground. The rest, spooked by the silent deaths of their comrades, dropped low wherever they were, scanning around and sweeping their rifle barrels in different directions that I felt a chill creep over me. It only takes one decent shooter with a decent rifle on their side. To my right, something flared and a muffled explosion followed. I tried to ignore it. Not my sector. The crosshairs settled on the head of a man lying behind the gates, cautiously peeking out. The rifle coughed softly, and the enemy's head exploded into pieces. Frowning in irritation, I shifted the scope to the next target. Suppressors don't last long. After a couple of magazines fired, I'd be spotted. I'd have to change it. Shot. They still hadn't realized I could see them. Shot. Shot. Crotches down. Came an anxious voice. Hold the line. Shot. My enemies understood lying low wasn't an option, and rising from cover, they surged forward, firing in all directions. Grenades flew, feeling cold sweat forming on my forehead. I pressed the trigger again and again, trying to keep up with the moving figures. Very close, a plasma grenade detonated, bathing me in a blast of hot air. The rifle clicked again as the magazine ran dry. Squinting against the light, I shoved in a new one. He's behind the truck, one of the runners shouted, pointing at me. The next moment, 3 of my bullets hit his chest, sending him flipping through the air. But it was too late. A hail of bullets poured down on the poor truck, and I, rolling like a young marsh frog, retreated deeper into the garage. That's Rookie. They spotted me. I'm pulling out under fire, Can't hold position. Hold your position, you coward. That's an order. Damn you, Lieutenant. I had no desire to die, but disobeying an order in combat was a death sentence all the same. That I took cover behind a machine deep inside the garage, sticking only my rifle out. At that moment, the vehicle at the entrance disappeared in the blast of a plasma grenade, causing the scope to flicker and switch to daytime mode. The smart electronic brain quickly recalibrated and restored the settings, zeroing in on one of the figures sneaking behind the burning equipment. I fired again. The figure screamed and collapsed, and a volley of bullets struck the garage. That I huddled behind my cover, expecting a ricochet, but then 3 explosions and several bursts came from the shooter's side. The firing stopped. Rookie, this is Andrews. I've got your back, but I'm not sure I got them all. Move up. We're holding the sector under crossfire. Take those bastards out. I'm at your 9 o'clock. Don't even think about shooting in my direction. Roger that, Sergeant. I crawled closer to the exit, scanning the area through the scope. At one point, I thought I spotted a target, but couldn't react. A brutal blow struck my head, nearly ripping it off and knocking me out cold. Rookie, respond, damn it, came a hoarse voice from the speaker. I'm here, I muttered, trying to make sense of what happened. What happened to you? Why no response? The lieutenant repeated my own question. I don't know, sir. I blacked out. My head hurts. You probably got a bullet in your helmet, the sergeant's voice answered. Nearby, gunfire resumed, and a scream echoed through the calm. The commanders had more important matters than me. Luckily, the sniper no longer paid me any attention, assuming I was done for. I carefully pulled the dropped rifle toward me and edged back to the wall, trying to block the line of fire to where the shooter might be. My vision was slightly doubled, and spotting targets was difficult. Actually, impossible. No enemies in sight. This is Rookie. My sector is clear. No reply came, but the gunfire nearby continued, so there were still survivors among us. I noticed I fully identified with the threes and smiled bitterly. The shooting died down. Looks like they're pulling back, guys, Andrew's voice said. I thought we were done for, Sergeant, but looks like we made it. What if they launch another gas bomb? I asked. Damn you, the sergeant growled. Rookie's right. Report by sectors. This is Loop. My sector is clear. This is Rookie. No enemy observed. Private Kyle. Clear. Private Jamal. Also clear. Half a minute of silence followed. Then someone, probably Loop, swore. Stand down. The sergeant's grim voice ordered. Disperse, move outside the base. Rally point at 10 o'clock. From the gates in 5 minutes. I spent a minute ejecting rounds from my rifle and loading pistol magazines. Should have done it earlier, but hindsight's always 20/20. The nearly empty magazine went into my pocket. 5 left. Still some fight left in us. Time was short, and throwing caution to the wind, I dashed toward the rally point. No one spotted me. Probably the enemy really had cleared out of the base for good. Rookie, you're an idiot. The sergeant greeted me, climbing over the fence. They'd have shot you dead if anyone was still here. What were you doing, fiddling? With your boobs? Loading pistol magazines. Couldn't have done that earlier? The sergeant hissed and turned away. Listen to my orders. Run, 5-meter intervals. Follow me. We ran. Stopped only a kilometer from the base, at the edge of a small forest. We spread out among the bushes and waited. We waited all night, but nothing happened. In the morning, command managed to contact the sergeant, informing us the global threat had passed, and we could return to the base and await reinforcements. That night dealt a terrible blow to the dictatorship's army. Nearly every deployed ground base was hit to some degree. About a third were completely destroyed. A ton of people died. And, honestly, the threes would have been driven off the planet if not for the orbital group, which the Commonwealth forces had nothing to counter. A hail of orbital strikes and massive drops ultimately broke the tide of the conflict. Everything suspicious on the planet was scorched. Curfews were imposed in cities, followed by mass arrests and just as many executions. The surface began to be scanned for leftover nuclear charges. By and large, the rebels who struck had pushed the invaders into the scenario analysts considered most likely. The threes got cocky, paid for it with blood, and swore never to make that mistake again. The 5 of us survivors from the 316th unit were sent back to the same center where I had been for evaluation not long ago. Now, as I understood, they were gathering those whose units had been nearly wiped out. No one took soldiers' ammo anymore. People were wary, rifles at the ready. But the capital was considered safe again, so we gradually started to relax. Then the interviews began again. The sergeant was the first taken from our group. Half an hour later, he sent a message over our communicators saying he'd been recommended for officer courses and wished us luck. Then it was my turn. "Take a seat, Private Alt," the major administrator said, giving me a sense of déjà vu. I sat in the same chair as last time, placing my rifle nearby. There was no guard in the office today, and no one cared about my weapon. "Private, I'd like to express the command's gratitude for activating the recording mode on your scope. Combined with the radio traffic data, your footage helped clarify the battle situation. The remnants reconstructed participants' reports." He studied something on the screen for a few seconds. "Command has tasked me with presenting you with the following combat awards. The combatant badge," he said, handing me a red box. Inside was a blood-red medal engraved with the number 1, a fairly standard badge for a soldier in a war army. The major explained apologetically, "Your battles are constantly logged in the network and linked to your identifier. But the badge isn't interactive, so it will need to be updated. That can be done at almost any supply depot. Your actions in battle were rated very highly. The command gratefully awards you the 5th class medal for courage. Congratulations, Private. This is an excellent start to your service and your first truly meaningful award. Wear it with honor." The major stood up and solemnly saluted me. I returned the salute, feeling mixed emotions. I was receiving another medal for killing my fellow citizens, but in my chest stirred a pleasant warm feeling. Disgusting. Also, based on the qualities you've demonstrated, you are promoted to corporal. We haven't found a corporal position for you just yet, but that's only a matter of time. And finally, I am authorized to ask you, where would you like to be assigned? I can't promise a definite transfer, but you have the right to express your preferences. Sir Major, all the time I've been in service, I have dedicated myself to training with the goal of joining the Space Assault Squad. Do I have a chance? The major grimaced the same way Captain Rogers did back in the day. Right now, unlikely. But I understand your ambition. I can accommodate you, but I warn you, you'll have to undergo 6 months of training at the Orbital Training Center. You will also lose your corporal rank and pay during those 6 months. The time spent in training does not count toward your standard 5-year contract. It's considered a leave of absence for training. Do you have the financial means for such a leave? Yes, I think so. I tried to estimate the balance in my account. It seemed doable. Then I don't see any major obstacles, the major nodded. And I have one more thing for you, a little surprise. During one of the recent operations against the insurgents, a man involved in the murder of your parents was captured. Take your rifle and follow me. Overwhelmed by mixed feelings, I followed the major. The most idiotic outcome of my mission one could imagine. Exposing a participant in the project trying to buy his life. High ideals are wonderful, but in moments like these, your own skin usually matters most. Come in, Corporal Alt, don't be shy. This man has already been interrogated and declared unimportant to the state. In the room, a man sat on a solitary chair, handcuffed and wearing blood-stained clothes. I barely recognized him as one of those who had once stood on the defendant's bench. 2 privates in army uniforms stood nearby. Some guys asked me to tell you they'd be very grateful if you don't kill any of them. I heard the voice of my first sergeant. Sorry. The man lifted his head and stared at us, the major and me. Recognition flashed in his eyes, mixed with surprise. That's our. With one smooth, practiced motion, honed long before my army service under the dictatorship, I drew my pistol from the holster, simultaneously disengaging the safety. My finger began pressing the trigger guard while the barrel was already aimed at the man's chest. The shot rang out exactly when the front sight aligned between the prisoner's eyes. He never finished his sentence, and I never learned whether he tried to buy his life with mine or intended to resist to the end. The soldiers standing to the sides cursed and jumped aside, avoiding flying skull fragments. Federation 15, a powerful thing. "Why did you do that, Corporal?" came the reproachful voice of the major. "You could have talked to him first, and then, so to speak, carried out this sentence." "I couldn't resist, forgive me, sir," I said through clenched teeth, slipping the pistol back into its holster. "All right, never mind. Let's go back. Soldiers, clean this up." Accompanied by disapproving looks, we returned to the interview office. The major, asking me to wait a moment, buried himself in the computer, fiddling with some complicated forms. "Well, Corporal," he finally said, "I've processed all the documents. A shuttle leaving tomorrow at 8 a.m. from the temporary spaceport near the Royal Beach can take you to orbit. You should get there without problems. There are always vehicles going there. Good luck with your training." After sending a message to the remaining guys in the platoon that I was heading to assault training, I set off. I could have tried to hitch a ride, but I wanted to take one last walk through the city. This time, none of the patrols rushed to check me. In uniform, with body armor, helmet, rifle, and pistol, definitely one of their own. The city had become even more ruined and charred. Remnants of barricades littered the roads. Houses bore bullet marks and stone scorch marks from plasma throwers. The fighting here must have been fierce. After walking a few blocks, suddenly a gray-haired woman leaned out of a window above me. "Die, cursed murderer," she yelled, throwing a flower pot at me. Just an ordinary flower pot. It shattered near my feet, scattering soil, while someone quickly dragged the old woman inside. She was replaced at the window by a pretty young woman in a house dress. "Sir Officer, please forgive my grandmother. She's lost her mind and lives in her own world." I felt sick and turned away, hurrying to leave. I felt disgusted for the terrified citizens, for the government that allowed this, and finally, for myself, enjoying the privileges of the victors. I lost the desire to roam the city and, after several failed attempts, finally caught a ride to the spaceport by 6 a.m. the next day. A little roughed up after a night spent on some mysterious crates, I headed to the shuttle. A similarly sleepy guard checked my ID and let me inside the cabin. I settled into one of the seats and fell asleep again. The pre-flight engine warm-up woke me. No one else had joined the passenger compartment during that time. I was traveling alone. The shuttle lifted off gently, carefully using gravity compensators, along with rocket thrust. Then the pilot, after confirming all systems were normal, pushed the joysticks to the limit, and the little ship shot upward with wild acceleration. My vision darkened from the overload. Damn, the pilot was clearly an adrenaline junkie, and apparently, no one told him there was a passenger. The overload pressing me into the seat went on and on. Fortunately, all suffering comes to an end. The shuttle left the atmosphere and stopped accelerating. A blissful lightness spread over my body. Then the compensators switched to artificial gravity mode, and everything normalized. About 20 minutes later, we seemed to have reached the battleship hanging in orbit. The shuttle began to brake and maneuver. Then it jerked sharply and, moments later, landed on something metallic, probably the external deck. About 10 minutes later, we were taken inside the ship, and the outer door opened. I got out into a small hangar, barely big enough for my transport. The pilot didn't show himself, and without seeing him, I set off to find the training facility. Quite a task, by the way. Finally, after about 40 minutes and a good deal of wandering through the ship's decks, I reached my destination. It turned out the assault troops had an entire deck assigned, and the training center occupied a large area there. The guard at the entrance studied my ID, snorted skeptically, but refrained from any comments. "Go right to Captain Molly. He'll update your card and explain what to do." The captain, as usual, was not happy to see me. In fact, I was hardly liked by anyone in the army. Sit down, Corporal. Have you thought this through? You know the conditions? You'll be a private again. No pay for 6 months, and no guarantee. You'll even end up with us. You've been infantry less than 2 months. Yes, sir, I know all that. I made my decision deliberately. Well, if you're sure. It all started over again, just like back on the planet. New uniform, which I immediately had to return and buy a more suitable one in the store. A new platoon, made up of infantrymen like me, all dreaming of becoming space marines. A new bunk and locker where I put my belongings taken from the ruins of my unit. They tried to give me new weapons, but seeing what I carried, they didn't insist. The Model 320 was enough to meet the minimum requirements for the Marines. Not perfect, but not junk either. At least good enough for training. My day was again scheduled from 6 in the morning to 11 at night. Wake up, shooting practice, breakfast, studying the newest weapons systems, training, lunch, tactics, sabotage training, hand-to-hand combat, dinner, free time. I was glad that the courses which took so much of my time on the planet were now part of the basic curriculum. Only specialty training remained, which I could continue on the battleship without issues, plus 2 full free hours a day and a completely free Sunday. No one planned to teach me how to fly inside a ship orbiting in space. As the sergeant at the local training center said, if I manage to become a Marine, they'll teach me all that stuff anyway. Well, if they do, so much the better. I spent a long time thinking about how to spend the leftover time, then got angry at myself and gave up. Nothing bad will happen to me if I rest a little. In the worst case, I could always go to the treadmill or the pool. So, for the first time in many years, I consciously allowed myself a small break. Although, there was an objective side to this. By that time, I had a little less than 5,000 credits in my account. Thanks to the recent awards, 2,000 for the medal and 100 credits for the badge. I had to spend 6 months without pay, and the expenses for the special training course alone would be 1,200 credits over that time. Additionally, I had my first exams in 5 months, which also cost money. Plus, I was supposed to take them in a suit, which I didn't have yet either. So that's about 1,500 credits. I set aside another 1,500 for living expenses, a little over 200 credits per month, which was quite reasonable. That would leave around 2,000 credits, which I considered an untouchable reserve. So basically, I just didn't have the money to sign up for anything else right now. Having reassured myself with these thoughts, I dove back into studying. Get up, rookie, it's time for your shift. You'll be watching our asses. I'm coming, back off. The red alert status hadn't been lifted in 3 years. I managed to complete training at the Orbital Training Center, pass the tests, and get assigned to the 71st Airborne Unit. I even passed specialization exams and signed up for an additional 6-month course with instructors from the Federation itself. But the resistance on the planet continued. Foolish, pointless, and pathetic, in my opinion. Though it really did get on the dictatorship army's nerves. Sometimes some unknowns would blow up an army truck into pieces. Other times, suddenly appearing rebels would shoot soldiers on leave. Or something else. Me, the shift to terrorism tactics was stupid and hopeless, and it only pushed the invaders towards something the citizens of the Commonwealth really didn't want. Rumors had started leaking that the entire original population of the planet would be relocated to Corona, to work on restoring the planet. And you could only return if you proved your value to the state through work. Apparently, an unimaginable scale relocation operation was being prepared. The most hospitable climate-wise of the 3 inhabited planets was supposed to become the new home for the victors. Corona, too, was turning into a kind of dumping ground for unreliable elements until the infrastructure was restored there. After that, I suppose the dumping ground would move to the 3rd planet. And the final outcome of the war would be that the Corona Commonwealth and the dictatorship of Corona 3 would swap places. I was even scared to imagine how many resources such a reshuffle would require. But I figured that's exactly how it would happen. I put on my assault suit, jumped around in it a bit, and, making sure everything fit properly, grabbed a rifle from my locker. No longer the Federation's 300 series, but the 500 series model I'd acquired about a year ago. I had to spend a fair amount and part with my old weapon, but it was worth it, especially since the new rifle allowed me to take the position of second sniper in the platoon. Now, by the way, the army no longer seemed to me a primitive mechanism just designed to squeeze money out of soldiers. Here, everyone always had freedom of choice. Those who, like me, invested in weapons and training, immediately appeared on the lists on the commanders' desks, and blessings would slowly start to drip onto them. Free qualification upgrade courses, accelerated career advancement, salary bonuses, an amazingly effective mechanism worked to identify the people the army needed. Those who came just to earn money got their pay, pulled their weight, but their affairs were set aside as hopeless. Those who wanted to achieve something faced resistance from the system, but also its help at the same time. Like me, I spent everything I had on top-class weapons and got a sniper's badge, along with a small raise, plus weapon insurance. If my weapon got damaged in military operations, I'd get the exact same model back instead of some rookie's cheap knockoff. In general, the system of checks and balances was working. Before leaving the barracks, I glanced in the mirror. The project training had already done a lot for me physically, and now the genetic changes embedded long ago, reinforced by constant training in the airborne, were showing. At 22, I already looked like a real stormtrooper, tall, broad-shouldered, with well-developed muscles, but not overbuilt. And my face matched, not exactly peaceful, to say the least. Dry, with cold gray eyes and a sometimes appearing unfriendly smile. Probably the fact that I had to shoot dozens of my former countrymen over the past few years left a significant mark. Turning away from the mirror, I pulled on my helmet and headed to the post. It was only about 200 meters to a small building housing the observation point. Now my first infantry base came to mind with a sad smile. A 2-meter fence without barbed wire or surveillance sensors. Makeshift structures, hastily assembled. Soldiers standing guard on small towers. The dictatorship's army then still didn't take the planet's population seriously, and they paid the price for it. Now it was different. A solid wall, with a minefield on one side and security robots scanning the area from behind the edge. On the other, drones keeping the entire area under control. Another high-level defense robot lurking underground, ready to establish a safe zone with a radius of 1 kilometer if danger arose. And constant communication with orbit, just in case. I checked in with my ID, entered one of the observation rooms, and slumped into a chair. If I wanted, I could even fall asleep here. In any case, the smart systems monitoring the surroundings would signal about something unusual, and in case of a direct attack, activate the defense protocol. The guard's task was to monitor the systems, proper operation, respond to emergencies, and provide data to the command. In short, I had nothing to do. After rebels attacking one of the airborne bases managed to breach the outer perimeter and disturb a hidden defender, such incidents stopped happening. It's hard to deal with an invulnerable, top-tier armored unit that hovers over the base, jams all electronics and communications, and generously drenches all suspicious directions with plasma streams and rockets. The attackers bled and quickly fled the battle, and henceforth swore off messing with the military. But guards still had to sit in rooms full of screens and information and get bored. 6 hours of duty passed predictably dull. Nobody planned to attack the base, and the command wasn't eager to receive useless information. So I ended my shift feeling alert and rested. I managed to grab a couple of hours' sleep. Rookie heading to town? Wait up. Patrick, a good-natured oaf from our platoon, slowed the vehicle beside me. You're going on leave too, right? We're leaving in 10 minutes. Don't be late. I nodded to my speeding comrade and hurried back to the barracks, deciding I'd have dinner in town. Changing into civilian clothes, though with the required military badges sewn on, took me a couple of minutes. Only my pistol remained from my gear, hidden under a light jacket. Get in. Jumping into the Jeep's back seat, I found myself in the company of 5 guys from our platoon, also ready for some rest. So, Guys, where are we heading tonight? Patrick asked as we passed the checkpoint. As usual, after a lively discussion, we chose the same place we'd been to about 10 times before. A great nightclub with an owner from the dictatorship. The airborne were always welcome there, and there was music, drinks, girls. What else could you ask for? I remember at first I was a bit shy on such joint outings, but it was okay. I got used to it and even got into it. I didn't really drink much, but I liked dancing to the pounding music, and I liked interacting with the ladies even more. Guys, what are you going to do when this is all over? Suddenly asked our ever-thoughtful Patrick, looking away from the passing landscape. Keep serving. What else? Patrick replied, without taking his eyes off the road. I just heard that every citizen here is entitled to some share. They might give you an apartment, a plot of land, or something else, depending on what you need. Patrick continued, ignoring him. Thinking of ditching the airborne? I asked, surprised. My contract ends in a year, he said thoughtfully. I'm thinking about it. I've got 4 more years, said the black giant with the unpronounceable name and the call sign Simpleton, sounding disappointed. You guys are crazy, Patrick said. Okay, rookie, you've got about 20 years until retirement, so you can quit. But you two fools don't have much time left at all. Serve your term and enjoy life. What's the rush now? A lazy argument sparked up about the pros and cons of civilian life, while I leaned back in my seat, closed my eyes, and once again drifted into thoughts about my future. Was it really worth leaving the military? From the project's perspective, definitely not. What would I even achieve out there? Even from a common sense angle, staying in the jump troops made more sense. In 10 or 20 years, I'd be set for life no matter what, assuming I survived that long. Though, of course, the thought of a little house by the ocean did warm the soul. The goals of the project, on the other hand, were already starting to fade into the haze of time, rookie. What? I came back to reality. I said, what are you going to do when we're done with this mess here? Hell if I know. I rubbed my eyes. Maybe I'll try for officer school. Thinking of signing up for the prep courses, then applying to the academy. Good idea, kid, Piotr said with a touch of sadness. Just don't do anything stupid. Don't try for officer in the jump troops. No point. Aim for the Navy, better prospects there. Why are you trying to lure him away from the jumps, you bum? Screw you, darky. We kept up the friendly bickering all the way to the city without even noticing the time pass. A few minutes later, we were already standing in front of the modest-looking sign, Crown Lights. The place might have looked unremarkable at first glance, but it came alive in every color imaginable as soon as you stepped through the door. Sure enough, as soon as we each deducted 100 credits for club entry, a group of charming girls in microscopic outfits magically appeared, handing out the standard set of 10 club tokens and a glass of champagne before dragging us inside. As usual, we split up. Some headed to the dance floor, Patrick disappeared into the gaming zone, and I, hand in hand with a flirtatious girl, made my way to the restaurant. For tokens got us a table for 2. Technically, I could have ditched the girl and roamed the club alone. It wasn't hard to find company here. But since the club offered an escort, why not? Besides, I vaguely remembered this girl, Lily. Pretty sure we'd spent time together. Before, after dinner, things went as expected. Lily and I wandered the club, had drinks, danced, listened to a concert by some artist I didn't recognize, danced and drank some more. I had to buy more tokens. Then more again. The evening slid smoothly into night, and Lily and I ended up in one of the hotel rooms above the club. Huge bed, romantic lighting, a warm, lithe body beside me. Honestly, that's exactly how leave was meant to be spent. As I drifted off in Lily's arms, I thought of Patrick the gambler and smirked with mild contempt. In the morning, we got up late, ordered food to the room, and spent a while rolling around in bed. After a shower, wrapped in towels, we lounged, side by side, enjoying coffee and breakfast. It's nice being with you, Lily said suddenly, crunching on toast. You're kinder than the others, I think. Nah, kitten. I'm just like everyone else. You're jump troops, right? She nodded at the pile of clothes where my holstered pistol lay. Yep. Your kind usually looks at us locals like we're objects or something. The last thing I needed. Now was a psychological debate. I seriously considered asking her to leave, but she must have sensed the shift. Don't mind me. I'm just talking. She smiled faintly. You're fun to be with. So if next time you want to hang out again, just ask for Lily at the entrance. I will. I smiled, sipping my coffee and switching on the TV. Looks like they caught someone from the resistance, she said bitterly, watching the screen. Feeling sorry for them, I started getting dressed. It's complicated. Those bastards think they're doing something good for us, but they're just making things worse. Now they say the whole planet might get dumped on Tier 2 because of them. Who needs that? Yeah, that's rough, I said, glancing at the TV, and froze. Surrounded by troopers in assault gear, awkwardly shuffling his feet, was none other than Dr. Zoll. Holy shit, I muttered, trying to make sense of it. You know him? Lily asked, surprised. No, not really. I know the guys from that unit. I covered. He must be a big deal if they're showing him on TV. She just shrugged and turned up the volume. As a result of a special operation, the detainee is believed to be one of the leaders of the planetary resistance. The archive, seized with him, is expected to expose an entire network of operatives. My watch beeped loudly. Emergency recall to base. Gotta go, sweetheart. I jumped on one leg trying to pull on my pants. Looks like we're in for a shitstorm because of this guy. Hope I see you again. I kissed her quickly and dashed out of the room. Near the vehicle were cheerful Piotr and a glum Patrick. Looked like the poor guy had bad luck in the games again. Rookie, Piotr nodded as I approached. Footsteps behind us. It was Simpleton, struggling to zip up his jacket. A minute later, the whole squad was assembled. Let's go. Anyone know why they cut leave short? There was a news report this morning. They caught some big shot, I said, along with an archive and all. We'll probably be flying soon. Damn it. I was just getting into chill mode. As we neared the base, we saw two drop bots shoot straight up into the sky. Looks like we're missing the fun, Patrick muttered, stepping on the gas. The gates opened automatically. The system had already scanned us, and apparently today we had top priority clearance. Tires screeched as the car stopped by our barracks. Simpleton lost his balance and slammed his forehead into a handrail. God damn it, Pat. No one paid him any mind. We all rushed inside. Protocol required speed and efficiency, standard drop trooper procedure. Everyone's here, Lieutenant. Stakowski, our platoon commander, nodded. You have 5 minutes. Assemble at the bot. Gear up, B1 configuration. This was serious. The B series meant planetary deployment. No space ops. And 1 meant full loadout. Reinforced armor, max ammo, extended gear shared among the whole squad. It even included a miniature nuke rocket launcher. Heavy as hell, too. I'd had to carry it once, wrecked my back. Luckily now Simpleton had it, and I got the drone. 5 kilos lighter, at least. For a few minutes, the only sounds were clicks and hums as the platoon suited up. Then, the first to finish sprinted to the rear wall of the barracks, the drop. Bot was waiting there. I boarded near the end. Cursed contraption never mounted on my back easily, even though it was supposedly human anatomy friendly. Cost me precious time every time. The lieutenant jumped into the cabin last, hit the signal button, and dropped into his seat. The hatch slammed shut. Gravity surged as the transport shot upward. Attention, came the lieutenant's voice. Here's your briefing. Screens lit up all around us. Our targets are 2 locals who are, with near total certainty, agents of the resistance. The percentage doesn't matter. Timing does. Some genius in HQ gave the green light to air the archive capture on the morning news, and the media happily broadcast it. So now every suspect out there knows they're on the chopping block. We have to grab these 2 before they even get out of bed. Photos of a settlement appeared on the displays, then switched to 2 young faces. Oliger Crick and Matt Parody. Pictures have been sent to your helmets. Hotkey Alpha. Mission: locate, capture, or eliminate. No priority given. Fire at will is authorized. Collateral casualties among locals are permitted by command. Collateral losses on our side were highly undesirable. There were around 30 of our people in the settlement at the moment. The coordinates of their communicators had already been uploaded. In plain terms, flatten only the buildings that don't contain anyone from Corona 3. According to intel, the target's beacons are active within the settlement. So we're locking down the perimeter and heading inside. Rookie and Garrison, Simpleton and Peter, Gwen and Long Ears, you're on perimeter control. The rest, drop into the center. Tactical command, Sergeant. Nico and I will take over watch, as usual. Time to arrival, 12 minutes. Everything proceeded as it usually did in situations like this. We dropped. I pretended to be a piece of the terrain I landed on, and Garrison covered me from behind. The other sniper pairs did the same. Normally, my role was limited to scanning the area through the scope, but occasionally, there were interesting exceptions. 1 minute to drop. Hard deployment. We're out of time. Data confirms the target's beacons were disabled a few minutes ago. Rookie and Garrison, you're first. The hatch in the floor next to me snapped open. Damn it, 10 seconds. I unstrapped myself from the seat, grabbed the gravity compensator cylinder tightly, and stepped toward the opening. Behind me, Garrison did the same. Garrison, go. Rookie, go. Wind slammed into my face, stealing my breath. The ground. Below, distant and rushing up. 2 kilometers down, maybe. I turned my head. The dropship was already vanishing into the sky. About 50 meters away, a second figure, Garrison, was also hurtling earthward. When he saw me glance his way, he raised a thumb. Good enough. Snapping back to awareness, I shut the lower half of my visor and finally took a full breath. Time to assess the landing site. Low hills, trees, clusters of brush. A sniper's dream. Perfect terrain for ambushes. A HUD message blinked before my eyes. 1,000 meters. The number began to count down, ticking off the meters left to fall. Gritting my teeth, I waited until it hit 200, then flung the compensator down. All that was left was to pray. The small cylinder had only gotten about 5 meters ahead of me when it hit the ground. Thank God, that was enough. A silent, invisible gravity pulse surged up. I hit it like soft mist turning to syrup, then to rubber, and then it was gone, and I dropped the last half meter onto the ground with a thump. Staggering slightly, I pulled myself upright and yanked off my helmet. My mouth tasted salty. Blood. A thin stream trickled from my nose. I'd probably look like a red-eyed demon if I saw myself in a mirror. Hard landings with gravity compensators were one of the reasons people called us insane. The G-forces were brutal, even if they ramped up gradually. Misjudging the drop was always a risk. Accidents did happen, but the deployment? Almost instantaneous. I sprayed a clotting agent into my nose, pulled the helmet back on, and keyed my mic. Rookie on the ground. Ready to go. Copy. Take up a position on the ridge a kilometer northwest. Satellite says the town will be in full view. Roger that. Moving. Garrison came up beside me, staring at his cylinder like it had personally wronged him. We're all gonna die because of these damn things, Rookie. Not today. Let's move. Lieutenant wants us on those hills. The hills were more like bumps, but the lieutenant was right. We had a perfect view of the settlement. Classic Commonwealth microtown, a small business center in the middle, surrounded by squat residential buildings, all ringed by orchards and grazing fields. I found a good hollow and laid down in it. Garrison draped the camo sheet over me. Now I was practically invisible to eyes or sensors. He'd probably moved off a bit and disguised himself as a bush or something. Drop is underway, the lieutenant's calm voice said in my earpiece. My scope, the descending troopers looked pathetic, like a kid had tossed a handful of toys into the air. But the chaos quickly resolved. One by one, they adjusted their bodies, correcting course, drifting into formation. They'd soon land. Secure the center and lock it down. I panned my scope over the nearest area. Nothing. Just a small herd of native cattle grazing about 500 meters out. Attention, boomed a voice from the sky. This is a government operation. Civilians are to remain indoors. Do not interfere with government forces. Do not. I tuned it out. The army had given in to civilian outcry, and now every operation began with this broadcast. Truth be told, civilian casualties had dropped since. The squad chatter crackled in my ear, all quiet. So far, so good. That meant it was shaping up like most ops. A patrol would stroll through town, declare it a Level 2 operations site, and ask all clean ID holders to evacuate. Our people, the ones with legit identifiers, would get safe haven and protection. The locals would get a stern warning to stay a few kilometers clear. Then we'd start the real work, rooting out whoever was left hiding. Tedious, but routine. A flash lit up the main street. Seconds later, a thunderous boom slammed my ears. Perimeter. Engage any targets exiting the town, came the lieutenant's order. Resistance inside the administration building. Active firefight, 10 hostiles. Several long seconds of silence. Data confirmed, only locals inside. Cleared to eliminate. Gunfire erupted somewhere in town. My scope flared as tracer rounds lit up the streets. Thick smoke began pouring from the building's shattered windows. Advancing, no casualties so far. Belay that. Evacuate building. Prepare for bombardment. 30 seconds. I could almost see it. A heavy cylinder detaching from the dropship's underbelly above. 30 seconds. A flash on a rooftop. Then a brilliant spear of light stabbed through the building from top to bottom. Windows flickering with reflections. A heartbeat later, fire burst from every opening. The structure flared up like a giant candle, then went out just as fast. Target neutralized? Need confirmation. Confirmed. Resistance eliminated. Building clear. Collect DNA samples from all corpses inside. Run quick match tests. Copy. Movement caught my eye in the bottom right corner of my scope. I shifted slightly. Well, Lieutenant, this is Rookie. I've got a group of 6 unknowns attempting to sneak out of the town. All adults. I see objects resembling weapons. Copy. Rookie. Eliminate. Understood. At the flick of a finger, the scope zoomed in. Clear as day. All young, about my age. Focused. Determined, guilt stabbed at me. But I didn't do anything stupid. Garrison, I'm opening fire. Shot. The last in the group jerked as their heads snapped back, body crumpling mid-stride. Shot. The next one, sensing something, froze just long enough for his skull to burst like a fermenting bottle. Shot. The guy in the lead, who had turned to, looked back, took a round between the shoulder blades. No worries. Those bullets weren't armor-piercing. They were designed for unarmored human flesh. Expanding rounds. He was already gone. Shot. Another went down, limbs flailing like a puppet. With cut strings, the last 2 dropped flat into the grass. Or at least, they thought they did. Shot. Shot. Lieutenant, this is Rookie. Group eliminated. Well done, Rookie. Keep watching. Nothing else happened after that. DNA samples taken from the town's dead confirmed that both of our targets were among them. One burned in the bombing. The other took a bullet from me. Mission accomplished. Attention, dropship arriving in 1 minute. All personnel to the main square. Perimeter, stay where you are. We'll pick you up. And just like that, it was over. Another operation, another tiny number added to my combat service badge. Command stopped handing out medals for nothing a long time ago, at least in my case. During my time with the drop troops, all I ever earned was an upgraded medal for valor. It's at level 4 now, but the numbers on my badge kept climbing. After today, it'll be a milestone, operation number 30, and I'm still alive. Once we get back to base, I'll head over to the depot for an update. Unfortunately, this time I never made it to the depot. Waiting beside the landing bot was a mini delegation, 2 officers in black uniforms with silver trim. While they were busy talking to our lieutenant, the rest of us stood by the bot, ready to launch again if needed. Only I had that awful gut feeling that the arrival of state security officers had something to do with me, and me alone. I was right. The lieutenant, having finished the conversation, walked straight over to me. His face showed the full spectrum of unpleasant emotions, but As it turned out, not directed at me. "Hey, rookie, you'll need to fly to the capital with these blackcoats." "Don't ask," he said, cutting off my question with a wave of his hand. "I don't know what it's about either. I assume it has something to do with this morning's arrest. Seems a lot of info came out. Hopefully, none of it's about you." I shook my head, then paused, thinking, "Hard to say, Lieutenant. I lived here for years. Maybe I ended up in someone's files." He nodded. "They're going to comb through everyone who was ever stationed here. Don't worry, just come back in one piece. Oh, and you've got 5 minutes to change into civvies. Though you can fly in uniform if you want. Just ditch the weapon." "Nah, I'll go in civvies. Might even stroll around the capital. Been a while." "All right then, we'll wait." With a few friendly jabs from the guys, I stashed my weapon in my locker, changed clothes, and walked over to the security officers. "Private Alt, sorry for the inconvenience. But it's been a hell of a day." "No worries." I shrugged and climbed into the small black flyer with a silver stripe. "Got anything to eat?" "I haven't had breakfast." The officer in the pilot seat shook his head. The other one took a seat beside me. The flight took only 30 minutes. The machine was surprisingly fast. And there it was, New Venice, covered in scaffolding and cranes, shrouded in a haze of cargo drones moving back and forth. The victors had decided to rebuild the capital right where the old one stood, and they spared no expense. But where were they getting the money and resources? Had to be some massive contract with the Federation. I wondered what it was for. The State Security building didn't stand out from the surrounding architecture. One of many in a district designed to evoke the ancient styles of Earth. I was led through a metal scanner corridor, nothing illegal on me, and then into a small room with a couch and a television. "You'll be called shortly." And with that, I was left alone for 3 full hours that I ended up watching an endless stream of news. The journalists were practically drooling as they dissected the global special operation that had started early in the morning and was still ongoing. Arrests were happening planet-wide. Strike teams were in action, gunfire echoed. Zolia's arrest seemed to have crushed the last hopes of any resistance. They kept replaying dramatic footage of an orbital strike on a recently discovered bunker. Apparently, it was one of the Federation's new weapons. I never fully grasped how it worked, but the gist of it was that a ship would fire some kind of gravitational beam at a target, creating immense pressure on the surface along with a high-speed downdraft. This wind tunnel acted like a pipe, allowing various munitions to be launched from orbit without burning up during atmospheric entry. Thanks to the rapidly descending air mass reducing friction, first came the gravity hit, then continued pressure. And if that wasn't enough, something heavier was sent down the well. The video showed a peaceful mountain valley, looked eerily like the second project base where I trained. Suddenly, the ground buckled, as if stomped by an invisible boot. A swirling vortex formed in the sky, sucking clouds downward. Debris blew toward the gravity well. Then a tiny spark zipped down the invisible tube, punching a neat hole in the earth. The well vanished, replaced by a violent outburst of air in all directions. The valley floor cracked, swelled, and spewed fire and dust fountains. A subterranean explosion of monstrous force. No survivors needed searching for. The video ended with the camera being knocked out by the shockwave. The screen flickered into static, but the clip was still impressive. No doubt about that. Eventually, after watching the news loop a third time, I was summoned for an interview. In a gloomy, sparsely furnished room, I was greeted by a gray-haired security officer wearing glasses and captain's insignia. He gestured for me to sit on the lone chair that I sat, ready to listen. The captain studied me in silence for a while, then turned to read something on his terminal. I waited, watching the bristly crown of his hair, then the ceiling. Finally, he spoke. "So, Private Christopher Alt, 71st Drop Unit. Before that, 316th Infantry. A recognized victim of the previous planetary regime, awarded full civil rights." "Yes, sir. Mind telling me what made you choose the Army, and later, the drop troops?" "Opportunity to combine work and study, Captain. He looked at me thoughtfully. That's all. Fair enough. Solid reason. And you really threw yourself into it. Education, commendations, combat. You aware that you've got 167 confirmed enemy kills? Yes, sir. You know what bothers me, Private? Let's take your very first engagement, when your unit was attacked. An invisible screen on the wall lit up, showing footage from long ago from my rifle scope. How would you assess your actions then, Private? Well, reasonably effective, I'd say, Captain. Exactly. The captain smiled like a gray desert rat discovering roasted coffee. In fact, they were very effective. Which raises a question. Where'd you learn to shoot like that? Are we missing something in your file? A chill crept down my spine, but I answered calmly. I trained a lot, sir. A lot. And while I wasn't much of a tactician back then, hitting targets, that's just mechanics. He nodded, still scrutinizing me. Sounds plausible. Through the scope, people look like toys. He went silent again, examining something on the display. 167 people, he finally repeated. We've reviewed the records of your kills. Most were by rifle. Congratulations, you're a remarkable sniper. But some didn't go down that way. For instance, look here. A new image appeared on the wall. A room, a man sitting in a chair, guards. I enter. Raise a pistol. Fire. You see, Private, we ran this past a couple of experts. They all said the same thing. It was flawless. Precise. Masterful. They were actually impressed by you. Thank you, Captain. I tried to flash the brightest smile I could. He looked slightly surprised. That wasn't a compliment, Private. Though I suppose it was, in a way. But what really caught our attention was that this perfectly executed shot came from a fresh recruit. A rookie, so to speak. I told you, sir, I trained a lot. No one believed I had what it took. No one wanted to draft me. Captain Rogers told me to my face I was worthless. Said I was a failure because, during the trial, I fired 6 shots and hit only once. You know about the trial, right? The captain gave a silent nod. I got angry, sir, I continued. I spent every free minute at the shooting range. I wanted to learn to shoot so well that no one could ever say anything bad about me again in that regard. Another nod and a thoughtful pause. So, Private Alt, the captain said at last, it seems that criticism has a very positive effect on you. Would you agree? Maybe. I'm not sure. I think it does. Let's return to the beginning of our conversation. Are you absolutely certain that your decision to join the army was made purely out of logic? That it wasn't about revenge? About punishing those who let your parents die, or the ones who killed them? Maybe, Captain, I muttered, staring at the wall. Don't worry. It's a perfectly normal reason. I'm actually glad we got to it. You see, there's data, statistics. And the numbers say that in our army, those who enlist out of simple, calculated motives usually don't achieve much. Our filtering system is very effective. The ones who get somewhere are those with a clear vision of their life path and the will to follow it. Or those, like you, who see the army as a tool for revenge. Normally, we discharge those kinds of soldiers. In peacetime, no one needs a man on a mission to kill his wife's lover. But you? The state actually welcomes your motive. He fell, silent for a moment, scratching the tip of his nose while staring at the desk. Then he went on. But there are 2 things. First, are you going to take revenge on just anyone? No, sir, I began, but he cut me off with a hand gesture. Words don't mean much here. I think it would be a good idea for you to have a psychological evaluation, private. If it goes well, it'll be a nice plus for your file. If not, well, sorry, but your service will be far, far from this planet. Yes, sir. I'll undergo the evaluation. Good. I'll issue the referral. But that's not what's bothering me the most. The captain leaned forward, placing both hands on the table, locking me in his sharp gaze. We received some very interesting data last night. Not that you're a stranger to it. You even took part in the special op related to it. He paused, eyes narrowing. There's a batch of files and they're labeled simply, Project. Ring. Any bells? It sure as hell does. I felt a chill run down my spine. Thank God for the training that taught me how to mask my reactions, and for the tweaked hormonal balance that kept my emotions in check. Should it, sir? I asked calmly. I don't know, maybe. It's got some curious material. About kids, 8 to 10 years old, from the second planet. Some kind folks train them for 9 years in some very questionable skills, like how to shoot a pistol with surgical precision. And there he was again, staring straight through me like he was scanning my DNA. Are you accusing me of something, Captain? Of being connected to that case? I nodded slightly toward the wall. The security officer frowned. Accusing? That's a strong and inaccurate word. Let's say, we have questions, private. What if everything we know about you is false? What if you're actually from that project? And this whole prison story was just a clever fabrication? What if the real Christopher Alt skeleton is lying at the bottom of some lake, long forgotten? I shivered involuntarily, and I knew he saw it. Captain, I honestly don't know what to say. How would you like me to prove that I am who I say I am? Tough question, private. Tough one. What works in your favor is that Zal didn't have time to get to the archive. The whole thing ended up in our hands, and there's nothing about you in it. I exhaled as subtly as I could. Dr. Zal had done his job well, but we asked the system another question. Do you know how many citizens of our state, of the right age for that project, raised under Commonwealth care with unverifiable identities, do? You know how many fit that description? Maybe 30? The captain shook his head. Wrong. 7. Another wave of chills ran down my back. Damn it. The old man made a mistake. Only 6 people had actually passed the second stage of the project. That meant one more person coincidentally matched the profile. Damn it all. One query, and all the top secret graduates laid bare before security. They just hadn't realized what they'd found yet. Captain, forgive me, I'm a bit shaken by this. I'm not going to get executed for nothing, am I? Will I at least get a lawyer? I can't prove I'm not who you're looking for, but I don't want to end up on a blacklist or thrown in jail for no reason. For now, and I stress, for now, you don't need a lawyer. We're just talking. Got any water, sir? These friendly chats could give a guy a stroke. He silently handed me a bottle. I downed it in one gulp. Felt a bit better. Are you angry, Private? Let's just say I'm a little surprised by the situation. Just a bit, Captain. He nodded. All right, let's move a bit further. He tapped something on the desk. 10 seconds later, a hidden door beside the screen opened, and in walked an elderly woman in a hideous dress, glancing around nervously. A bracelet on her wrist identified her as a local dot. I stared at her blankly. For a moment. Then it clicked. That was the neighbor of my supposed parents, Mrs. Stock. Jean Stock, I think. Mrs. Stock. What a surprise to see you here. Captain, this lady can vouch for who I am. And who the hell are you supposed to be? Came a raspy, annoyed voice. I blinked. Mrs. Stock. We lived on the same floor for years. I'm Chris, remember? I remember Chris. But I don't know who you are. But I once found your cat, Fluffy, in the stairwell and brought him back to you. You gave me a cream cake. Chris did that. I am Chris. Don't yell at me, you alien bastard, the old woman suddenly screamed. Chris was a quiet boy. He would never have joined the army. He wanted to be an astronaut, not a killer. God damn it. I muttered under my breath, glaring at her. That's how brilliant plans go to hell, because of some senile old witch. And anyway, you're from that stinking resistance. You're all the same. May you rot in hell, every one of you. Someone entered the room, gently but firmly taking the furious woman by the elbow and leading her out. I turned to the captain. Captain, I protest. That hag deliberately smeared me. I have no idea why. We always got along. He winced. Don't shout, Private. After that, I'm more inclined to believe you than her. Looks like her mind's gone. She'd do anything to spite us. 30 years younger, she probably would have joined the resistance herself. I calmed down a bit. But seriously, what would it have cost that old crone to just confirm who I was? Which, send in the next one, the captain said into the desk. The next visitor entered, a man who looked even older than Mrs. Stock and visibly uncertain. Chris, is it really you? They told me you'd been found, but I could hardly believe it. We buried your whole family a long time ago. So you were the only one who survived? I'm sorry, son. Thank you. I muttered, racking my brain to remember who this guy was. My mind spun through photo fragments, bits of dossiers, recorded conversations. I glanced around, bewildered. Both men were watching me. The new arrival with a timid smile, the captain with keen interest. Come on, kid. It's me, Uncle Joe. You used to play with my boy out in the yard all the time. We lived right next door. I couldn't recall him. Not a single document mentioned an Uncle Joe. Not one. All I could do was offer a helpless smile and play the fool. They drilled it into my head during the project. Clear and simple. It's better to not recognize someone you're supposed to know than to run up with joyful shouts and hug a complete stranger they sent in to test you. Sorry, Uncle Joe? I don't remember you. And I don't remember playing in the yard either. I'm sorry. The captain frowned in displeasure and waved Uncle Joe out of the room. The man hesitated a moment, as if trying to say something, then sighed and left, without uttering another word. Well, that didn't sound very convincing, Private, the captain said, eyeing me again. You weren't that young. You should remember him. I don't know, sir. I didn't really play that much, to be honest. It was always cold out there, and Mom made me study instead of wasting time. I remember sledding with Beat. Johnny was there too. I remember him. But this guy's son? Not a clue, sir. Not even if you beat it into me. The security officer nodded and calmly called someone else, and a stocky guy in infantry uniform entered the room. His face looked vaguely familiar, and fragments of dossiers started flashing through my mind. No way, Johnny. Is that you? I couldn't believe the coincidence. I'd just been thinking about him. The guy flashed a huge grin, showing all 32 teeth. Hey there, little bro. I stood up from the chair and approached him, still staring in stunned confusion. A whirlpool of information spun through my head. Yeah, it's me, he said, giving me a playful jab on the shoulder. When they told me I needed to ID an old childhood buddy, I didn't even get who they meant. Been so many years. Well, I'll be damned. I tried to look as bewildered as possible. How have you been? Good. Had to do some shooting. Lately, of course, but now everything's all right. Contract's almost up. They'll give me some land, and I'll bring my family here. You're in the jump troops, yeah? Yeah. Took some sweat to get here, but I'm doing all right too. Not planning to leave the army, though. The captain cleared his throat, pulling our attention back. Bro, listen, Johnny said quickly. Find me once you're through all the checks. I'm with the 15th, stationed by the coast. Don't vanish, all right? The captain watched the door Johnny had gone through for a moment, then turned his gaze back to me. That second guy, he said slowly, is one of our staff psychologists. Would have been quite a twist if you suddenly remembered playing in his yard. They're good, the bastards. But my teachers didn't eat soup with a boot either. The captain paused for dramatic effect, sighed, and continued. So, he just sent me his report. Long story short, he sees no reason to put you up against a wall. External responses are normal, and the instrument readings are clean. So, you can relax. All that's left is one last trip, and then you're free. The walk took a while. We went downstairs and wandered through corridors. Finally, another door opened, and we stepped into a room where, along with two guards frozen in the corners, sat none other than Dr. Zoll himself. That a chill ran down my spine again. The doctor had clearly deteriorated over the years. His hair had thinned, the wrinkles deepened, and he looked smaller somehow. Drier. There was a massive bruise under one eye. He didn't even look at us, just sat on a narrow couch, staring down at his feet. Footsteps echoed behind us, and someone else entered the room. I turned, and didn't even flinch, curiously studying the well-known faces. Jared stood there in a light gray suit, glancing around with lazy curiosity. To him, this was an adventure, a government clerk, or whatever he was, invited into the depths of state security. A memory for a lifetime. Novak wore a completely nondescript outfit. He looked like either a plumber or a technician in a high-end lab. It was hard to tell at a glance. Carl had shown up in infantry fatigues with sergeant stripes and was glaring at Jared with open disdain, probably reenacting the classic scene. The intellectual versus the brute soldier. Bobby was also in infantry uniform, and his was smeared with what looked like dried blood. His left arm was held stiffly, seemed he'd been wounded recently. Ahmed sported a flashy hairstyle, a well-groomed beard, and an outfit that probably cost half my yearly salary. And then there was some bland guy in overalls that I scanned each of them carefully, gave a military salute to Carl and Bobby, got a return salute in kind, an eye roll from Jared, and was otherwise ignored. I turned to the captain. Sir, I haven't met any of them before. The captain nodded, accepting my statement as perfectly natural. You're here so this man can take a look at you. Stand him up. Dr. Zoll was still seated, staring blankly at the floor. One of the guards grabbed him and yanked him to his feet, lifting his head so he had to look forward. His eyes were dull, glazed. The whites of his eyes had a faint turquoise sheen. Drool was trickling from the corner of his mouth. One of the truth serums was clearly in effect. Dr. Zoll, the captain said firmly, look at these people and tell me if you know any of them. The old man tried to focus his gaze. He squinted, blinked, forced his eyes open again. His glance briefly brushed over my face, hesitated, then drifted on. I shifted slightly, ready to move if needed. You could see the struggle contorting his face, how hard he was fighting the drug. It was bad. And if the doctor had any sense at all, he knew exactly how bad. If he went through all that effort only to say he recognized no one would believe him. Do you recognize any of them? Answer. And no. The doctor croaked at last. The captain muttered a curse and stepped forward. All 7 of you. Back against the wall. Don't move. Guards, aim your weapons. Bring in the doctor. The wall was cold and rough against my back. Not the kind of sensation you want when 2 assault rifles are aimed at you from across the room. A new doctor entered, glancing nervously at us. He eased Zoll back onto the couch and, without even sanitizing the injection site, plunged a full syringe of some azure fluid into him. 30 seconds. He muttered darkly before slipping out. Show us your students, doctor. The captain barked. Zoll's eyes opened wide, coming to something like awareness. One arm rose and extended in our direction. He's here. His name is Bobby, second from the left. His eyes suddenly opened even wider and froze. The outstretched hand started to fall. His body slumped sideways.